thrilled to have you back at Unconventional Diner for our third annual Punch Bowl News HQ during CBCF ALC. A big thank you to Chime for coming back and partnering with us once again for such an impactful day. For any of you who are new to Punch Bowl News, we launched in 2021. Our focus is on power, people, and politics in our nation's capital. And we are thrilled to be partnering with Chime today as we focus on financial access and digital banking in our editorial conversations. We got a lot of other programming. For those of you who got here early, you got a sneak peek into what a lot of our premium members get as a benefit, which was a briefing by some of our top policy reporters in the financial services and tech space. And a big thank you to Dave Clark, our policy editor, for moderating that conversation. As always, we want the Punch Bowl News HQ to be a fun place with food, drinks, networking, and to offer a chance to relax during a very busy week. I kicked it off on Tuesday evening, so CBC week is the full week, that is for sure. I want to point out a couple things. We've got a couple of our folks in the back over there doing demos of the portal, which is our new data intelligence platform. Would love for you to check that out. It is really something that we are really excited about, that kind of makes and enables people's jobs easier when it comes to finding out information on Capitol Hill and putting together a bunch of different information. We also have Jalen Beckford, one of our producers. He's going to be at the Step and Repeat. We have a fun Money Talks social forward feature that we're doing, so please go introduce yourself to Jalen. He's got a couple of quick questions in the financial access space. Oh, he's waving his hand in the back. There he is. Hello, Jalen. We appreciate you. Thank you. All right, so this morning we are going to be kicking off the day with an interview with Maryland Governor Wes Moore, talking news of the day and financial inclusion and the future of digital banking. Afterward, I'm going to be joined in a fireside chat with Chime Chief Compliance Officer Shara Chang. And later this afternoon, we have Elvina Nawaguna. She's our special projects editor, and she's going to do an industry expert panel. We've got Match Group doing a community conversation. We also have our ambassadors coming on stage and a toast to end the day. So please stick around. I know people are going to be popping in and out, but we really appreciate you being here this morning. And first of all, I want to welcome Jeff Stultzfus, VP of Government and Public Affairs at Chime, for some opening remarks. Please give it up for him.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Welcome to Punch Bowl News headquarters. And it's not intimidating, by the way, at all to have Governor Moore standing there waiting for me to exit stage. We love participating in CBC Week and have been doing so, and this is our second year here at Punch Bowl, and we're so grateful to be here and to participate in this important week of events. For those who haven't met me, I'm Jeff Stultzfus. I worked in public sector here in DC for 10 years. I'm delighted now to lead Chime's efforts, government and public affairs, and it really has been rewarding in particular given what we've been able to achieve in consumer banking. We recently became a public company, so that marks a new chapter. We started as a disruptor, and now we are a stable, enduring provider of consumer banking services. We've been at it for 13 years. What hasn't really changed is that mission grounding and our leading value, member obsession. We enable financial progress for everyone. And so that really anchors how we build product, and it is a evolution of our impact. I'll give two examples. The first is SpotMe. So SpotMe is free overdraft protection, $41 billion offered over the course of the last few years, a big difference to Chime members, particularly also an impact on industry. In the time that we've been in market with SpotMe, overdraft fees have come down by 50%. So that's impact of disruption, traditional banking, and that's very much us living our values. I would say, too, that innovation plays a significant role in that process. And the dynamic I would like to point out is that while rulemakings don't necessarily get always to the outcomes, and in this case, with overdraft rulemakings, they didn't, our innovation did persist and is durable in the overdraft space. And so we're quite proud of that. So what are we doing next? Last year we entered earned wage access. So earned wage access is really about enabling individuals to access pay that has already been earned when they otherwise have a need and they're waiting on payday. So we entered that space last year. We've provided more than $8 billion to date in access. And we're not stopping with that offering, which is we say direct to consumer, meaning we offer it directly to our members. We're transitioning now and offering also a product via employers. And the innovation there, in part, is that we are the primary account provider, and we are offering it for free, instantly. We're the only ones doing that. We're the only ones doing both direct-to-consumer and now direct-to-employer and free. What I would say to tie this to the governor of Maryland is that earned wage access is really a patchwork situation on the regulatory side. And what we see is that some states have stepped up and led. Maryland is a prominent example, and Governor Moore can talk about his approach there. He and his colleagues, legislators, and others in Maryland took a practical, very rigorous approach. They succeeded. They moved the needle. They now have something that others can replicate. And I think he will say, and others will say, there's more work to do, and we welcome that. So that really leads to why we're here. Responsible innovation, tailored regulation. We are looking to continue serving everyday Americans all across our great country, and partnering and collaborating with you all during this week is a great honor for us, and we appreciate being part of that policymaking process and having the impact. Finally, thank you, Anna at Punchbowl. Thank you to the other panelists, particularly Delicia Hand and Jennifer Tescher. And with that, I'll turn it back to Anna. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for kicking us off. I'm going to welcome the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, to the stage. Look at that energy. I love it. Thank you. It's not every policy conversation that starts with a woo-hoo.
Because they're all Marylanders. This is great.
I love it.
It's home court advantage.
Standing room only.
That's it. Hey, everybody.
All right. Well, we are going to have a great conversation this morning.
Yeah.
I want to start, as we always do, news of the day. So we are just a few months.
Are there things going on right now?
Nothing happening. We had House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries at the Punchbowl News Townhouse earlier this morning as we were shooting Flyout Day, our new video-focused show, talking about the shutdown. And in particular, President Donald Trump's kind of announcement last night that they were going to exact painful, potentially, layoffs if there is a government shutdown. Maryland has been hurt more by DOGE, and think about the number of people that work in your state, are in and around the federal government. What's your reaction, and what do you tell Marylanders?
Well, I think for Marylanders, I mean, this is exhausting. Yeah. It's also exhausting because it's not new. You know, let's be clear. For Maryland, there's been a federal government shutdown for the past 9 months. I mean, you know, Donald Trump has now fired over 15,000 Marylanders. You know, we've now had federal agencies that they're attempting to gut. We have had, over 250,000 people now in threat of losing their health care. We have had federal installations that the president has now decided to say that, for example, things like the FBI building's not coming to Maryland because it is a liberal state. That we had historic flooding in Western Maryland, where we were literally some of the first boots on the ground, where there were boats that had to save children from the second floor of their schoolhouse because the first floor is washed out. And we put in for emergency federal disaster relief funds, which we qualified for, and the President of the United States then said, well, Maryland will get nothing. And by the way, Not a single state that did not vote for Donald Trump has gotten a single dollar of federal disaster relief. So the president has essentially been putting together a federal government shutdown on Maryland since he's been in office. Now, I don't understand why we're now putting a condition on having the government open on things like, well, then we're going to rob your health care. I just find the cruelty of this entire conversation so heartbreaking, because I know the people this is going to impact, because I don't have the luxury of sitting in the Oval Office and making ridiculous statements. I'm actually in communities. And so I know who this is going to impact most, and that's why my heart breaks for them. But the problem is that I don't think that the president's heart breaks for them. And that's the problem with who we're negotiating with.
All right, we are going to switch topics, but it aligns, because I want to talk about redistricting, right? If you look at power in Washington, both chambers of Congress and the White House are controlled by Republicans. That means they control a lot of what happens in this town. There has been a push by the Trump administration when it comes to states like Texas, Missouri, and Indiana, trying to redistrict them. There's a conversation in Maryland about kind of pushing back, and the delegation split. Where are you on whether or not you should engage in some redistricting?
Oh, I'm not split on this at all. And here's the thing. It's, it's important for people to remember, the reason we're even having this conversation is because Donald Trump was the one who introduced it. Because, and actually, in fairness to the president, I kind of get it. Because I don't know if I would want to run for, in the midterms, if my platform was, I've just raised your prices on everything. I've taken away your health care. I've cut federal jobs. By the way, vote for me. So I kind of get it, right? I kind of get that he says the only way that he can do well in the midterm elections is if he changes the rules. But frankly, this kind of tracks, because this is what he's done his entire life. You don't like the answer, just change the rules. And he's gotten away with it, right? And so while I actually stand with the majority of Americans who hate this idea of gerrymandering, I stand with the majority of Americans who hate the fact that less than 10% of our congressional districts are competitive right now in the first place. Less than 10%. And by the way, that includes in the state of Maryland. Right. I also know this, is that the president cannot pick and choose the rules. The president cannot call certain states and say, hey, I want you to have a conversation about if you have fair maps. But by the way, you other states, no, you need to stand on principle. That's not the way this game works. And so my only thing is this: if certain states are being called on to figure out if they have fair maps or not, then all states should have a conversation about whether or not they have fair maps or not.
All right, Maryland in favor of redistricting in this situation.
Yeah, I've been clear. And listen, I know that legislation has to be passed on it, and this is something that has to go through the General Assembly. But I am working with members of the General Assembly, and I am very clear that all options are on the table when it comes to the state of Maryland.
All right, we are going to quickly change to financial access and what is happening in Maryland, but I can't not ask. 2028 presidential bid. Let's make some news. There's a lot of speculation you're in.
Yeah, I am not in. No, and I'm very excited about our reelection. I just announced that I'm up for reelection, so for all you Marylanders, I would love, and I'm asking for your support as we go into reelection. And the great thing is, I think we got a story to tell. You know, when we first came on board, Maryland was ranked 43rd in the country in unemployment. And what did we decide to do? We made historic investments in trade and apprenticeship programs and platforms, saying that we have some of the best four-year colleges in the country, but we are going to end the myth in the state of Maryland that every single one of our students needs to attend one of them in order to be economically successful. That we created the first in the country service year option for all of our high school graduates. So now high school graduates in the state of Maryland have a chance to have a paid year of service to the state of Maryland, both because it's a great pathway into the workforce, and also I believe deeply that in this time of this political divisiveness and vitriol, that service will save us. That I signed the largest mass pardon in the history of the United States of America when I signed a pardon for over 175,000 misdemeanor cannabis convictions, giving people a second chance at life and saying that not every sentence needs to be a life sentence, and I refuse to celebrate the benefits of legalization if we do not address the consequences of criminalization and what has happened in our society. that we have had amongst the fastest drops in violent crime anywhere in the United States of America. In fact, if you look at Baltimore City, the last time the violent crime rate was this low in Baltimore City, I was not born yet. So I think we got a story to tell.
All right.
And I'm excited to go back in front of the people and make our case for it.
All right. Well, you laid the land in terms of how Maryland is doing on the economic front. Let's dive a little deeper. Earned wage access is a big issue.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about what you've done in that area, and I think what's interesting, particularly when it comes to working with the state's legislative body.
Yeah. Well, this became a core focus as to why we wanted to run in the first place. Where, when I said the North Star that we have for our state, it's actually very simple. We're going to create pathways to work, wages, and wealth for everybody in our society. Work, wages, and wealth. That we are going to make sure the conversation was not just about how can I drive higher incomes, which we've done. We raised the minimum wage. We've been able to, we now have had over 30,000 new businesses start in the state of Maryland since I have been the governor. We've had 100,000 new jobs added in the state of Maryland, the vast majority in the private sector since I've been the governor. We've added more jobs in the past 2.5 years than my predecessor added in 8 years in office. So we're really proud of that. But the reason I say this, it's also about wealth. The ability to own more than you owe. The ability to pass something off to your children besides debt. Wealth. The thing that people cannot take away from you, and the thing that even if you lose your job, you still hold on to. And so when we're talking about things like earned wage, when we're talking about things like why we have been so aggressive on housing, why we've been able to work with our legislature to be able to create these various pathways, it really is very simple. I want to create an ownership society. A society where people have a chance, where our entrepreneurs have a chance for a greater level of financial access, and I'll talk about some of the work we did on that as well if you'd like. The fact that we've done our work on housing to make sure we're making it easier for first-time home buyers, making it easier for renters to become homeowners, increasing and being able to address the issue of unfair appraisal values in historically red-line neighborhoods, because frankly, unfair appraisal bias has been one of the greatest wealth thefts that we have seen, not just in the state of Maryland, but across the United States of America. That this is a chance that if we're serious about being able to address earned wages, if we're serious about being able to address the racial wealth gap, if we're serious about being able to put people on better pathways to have something that they can own, they can grow and accrete in value, then we're going to have a better chance of having a long-term economic future that everyone can participate and everyone can feel a vested interest in.
Well, talk about that. How do you strike the balance? Because you're trying to push innovation in the state, but consumer protection is also important.
Yeah, but I don't think that those two things move individually. Mm-hmm. I am very pro innovation. I'm very pro access, and I'm also saying that you cannot just have freewheeling industries where you don't have any sense of acknowledgement on controls on that. Because the problem is that when you do that, a couple things happen. You will have growth. You will have wealth creation. And you'll also have the creation of wealth gaps. It's the reason that we have said, for example, I think about just yesterday. Just yesterday, I was in the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And in fact, yesterday was the 51st visit to the Eastern Shore. We have a reputation that I'm very proud of, that we kind of go everywhere in our administration. And yesterday, the 51st time we went out to the Eastern Shore, and we spent time in a place called Smith Island. And for many people, you might not have heard Smith Island. If you have, maybe you've heard of the cake, right? Because Smith Island cake is the official dessert, and it is absolutely delicious of the state of Maryland. But it's a place that is so remote and has been so disconnected that they did not even have broadband access over there. And so the point is that when we're talking about these financial tools and financial assets that we're very excited about, that's wonderful. But if you do not have basic access to broadband, what does that mean to you? And so yesterday we were there in Smith Island to announce that for the first time in the history of Smith Island, not only was I the first governor since 1999 to even visit Smith Island, but also for the first time in Smith Island, they now have full 5G broadband access all throughout the entire area. Everyone is now connected. That impacts every resident, every business that is there. And here is why that matters. Because we want to make sure that everyone can participate. in a belief and an aspiration that these financial tools are important and they're necessary. But if they are not done in a way that has consumer protection at its baseline and also access at its baseline, the only thing that you're promoting is wealth gaps. And that is something I just refuse to have happen as long as I'm the governor of Maryland.
Let's talk about that, because one of the things that you're really focused on is making sure that Maryland maintains and continues to be a leader when it comes to the fintech space. You signed into law the Access to Banking Act, which created the Maryland Community Investment Venture Fund, which dedicated $2.5 million to expand small business access to capital in undeserved areas. Yeah. Why was that important? What are some of the things that have come out of that?
Because the areas that have been neglected most are going to be the first on my list when it comes to being able to provide supports to now. And I'm unapologetic about it. So yes, it was one of the first bills that we personally introduced it. And I was very proud to sign it. One of the first bills signed was this access to banking. But by basically saying that there were certain areas and certain neighborhoods and communities that financial assets and financial tools were actively being used to discredit and ignore many of these communities. And there is more data now that we have in world history to back up that assertion. If you look at the, for example, if you look at the racial wealth gap that exists in the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland, when I first became the governor, had an 8-to-1 racial wealth gap. And I was very clear, we don't have an 8-to-1 racial wealth gap because one group is working 8 times harder. We have a racial wealth gap because of policies. We have a racial wealth gap because of inequities. We have a racial wealth gap because of things like unfair appraisal values in historically redlined neighborhoods. We have a racial wealth gap because of things like what happened in Pine Street over in the Eastern Shore. We have a racial wealth gap because we have seen how policies have been used to exclude. And so the reason that we wanted to pass the Access to Banking Act, the reason that we wanted to create the Maryland Community Investment Venture Fund, and making sure that the communities that have been most neglected are going to be at the front of the line, the reason that we did things like our Just Communities initiative, which is where we now have allocated $400 million in state capital. And that state capital goes first to communities that have a history and a legacy of slavery, Reconstruction, and white supremacy, and being able to make sure we can focus on housing and wealth creation inside of those neighborhoods. The reason that we want to do that is because the data is deeply clear in our state. And we just believe in following the data. And so by being able to have now these financial tools and these financial assets, that if we can actually be able to address a racial wealth gap, that actually doesn't help some groups. That helps all groups. If you understand that the reason that this country, over the past 20 years, has lost $16 trillion in GDP because of the racial wealth gap. That's not GDP of a group. That's GDP. That exclusion and racism is terribly expensive. And it's terribly detrimental to the hopes and the aspirations of not just certain parts of this country, but all parts of this country. So if we can actually have these tools that are utilized, if we can have access where financial institutions can prioritize and look at communities that have been left behind, if we can make sure that we can take state capital and leverage private sector capital that goes into venture funds that's supporting fintech operations that can best support the uplift of communities, then I think it's the best way for us to actually achieve alpha and for us to achieve real societal return in areas and communities that most need them.
So let's talk the future of finance when it comes to that. There's a big conversation around artificial intelligence, right? Especially here in Washington, how to regulate it, how to think about it, how to use it, how to make sure people aren't displaced with it. Yeah. You put out an executive order last year on AI in the Maryland state government. What's your goal, and how do you see Maryland being an incubator or a place where AI might thrive and flourish?
Yeah, and we made Maryland one of the only states that actually has a senior advisor to AI that actually reports into our office. Like I'm very bullish on what I believe the hopes of AI can be, and I think it's on a collection of different levels. I think it has a chance to absolutely transform education and providing real educational supports for both our students and also lifelong learners. I believe it can absolutely transform healthcare, both when it comes to preventative medicine, but also when it comes to being able to serve and support places like what we have seen, like what I saw over in the Eastern Shore yesterday. I think it has a chance to completely rethink how can we have new and diverse economies in exciting ways. The thing I also know is I plan on being on our front foot when it comes to AI, and I do not want to be on my back heels. I don't want to have to be a state that's responding to it. I want to be the state that's helping to shape it. And the reason that also I think it's important to shape, it's not just because I want us to have the opportunity to be able to capture what I think are the fundamental benefits of what it can provide, but I also want to make sure that as we are having these economic revolutions, that all communities can benefit from them. Because that has not happened. We've had these revolutions that have taken place, even if you just look at the past 20 years, right? Everything from the internet to cloud computing to crypto. And look at who has benefited from it. Look at the fact that you've had these new technologies that have actually increased wealth gaps. I am very focused on making sure that this has an opportunity to be a new technology that does not increase wealth gaps, but can actually decrease and eliminate wealth gaps. Because there's a chance to see that, yes, this is a very powerful technology. And again, also one of the reasons we do not want to be on our back heels of something that is such a powerful technology. But at the same time, if we have a chance to do that and steer it, we actually have a unique chance to show what is the promise and what this can actually look like. But I believe the only way you're going to do that is if you are actively engaged. I think for the people that are, sticking their heads in the sand on it without understanding that it is here already. I think for the people who are, just simply looking at it from a defensive posture and not from an offensive posture, I think these are people that are both going to have the opportunity of missing. And by the way, those who somehow think that this is a conversation only taking place in the United States, without understanding the entire world is having this conversation right now. I think those are the people that don't just have a real danger of being left behind, but frankly, for the people that they represent, they're going to leave them behind too. And that's something I just will not allow happen.
All right, we are quickly going to get the hook here, but before we do, we are at a CBCF ALC, a big week here in town.
Yes.
The theme this year is Made for the Moment. Thank you so much. Sometimes I need help in the crowd. Work. What does Made for the Moment mean to you?
It means remembering that there is never a room that you're in because of someone else's kindness. Listen, I'm clear, y'all. And I understand, people have asked, they're like, is there a specific, when you think about kind of the uniqueness of this seat that I'm in, where I am the first black governor in the history of the state of Maryland and only the third African-American ever elected governor in the history of this country. That I am, that I remember I very intentionally started my inauguration down at the Annapolis docks. And for those who have not been down there, it's beautiful, but that's not why I started my inauguration there. I started my inauguration there because the Annapolis docks were home to one of this country's first and largest slave ports. And we started our inauguration morning where hundreds of us gathered there. And we said a prayer to the ancestors. And we did a wreath laying. And then we marched together from the docks to the State House, which was built by the hands of enslaved people. And that's where I was first inaugurated as the first black governor in the history of the state of Maryland. And I think about all of the, the message that I said, because we had a bunch of students who joined. And I remember the message I said to the students was this, is that in every room that you are in, you are not there because of someone's benevolence. You are not there because of someone's social experiment. You are not there because someone wanted to sprinkle diversity into the room. You were there because that room was incomplete until you showed up. And I think, especially right now, when we talk about what it means to be made for the moment, this is a very difficult moment for a lot of people. This is a very challenging moment. This is a moment when when the realities of what we are seeing and of what this administration continues to spew, like we are watching this in real time. The thing that I would say to people is this, is being made for the moment also means remembering where we came from, remembering what those who came before us had to endure, remembering our past, remembering our history, and remembering that there was two things that got them through it. It was God's grace, and it was moral leadership. And in this moment right now, I think being made for the moment means that's what's going to help us navigate through this moment as well. And that's why I have full confidence that no weapon formed against us, no matter its form, shall prosper, and that we're going to be all right.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Governor Wes Moore, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.